Pregame.com.
Steelers -3 at Cincinnati, Sunday NFL. Boy, this is a game where one play with less than 10 seconds left completely changes the conversation. Imagine if that play's incomplete, all of a sudden Pittsburgh redeems himself, favorite in the AFC, great comeback. Now it's Baltimore's the favorite in the AFC.
Well,
you were at the game.
I was at the game. Well, I'm a big situational handicap. If the Steelers would have won that game, this play would have set up as one of my biggest plays involving the Pittsburgh Steelers of the entire season.
And you would have been looking to fade them.
I would have been absolutely looking to fade them because you would have had Pittsburgh coming off New England and Baltimore, their two biggest nemesis in the AFC, winning both games, and then having to travel on the road to play Cincinnati, which you've heard me use the phrase before for Cincinnati. This is their legitimizer game. This is the game where, we're going to find out if they're real or not. They have something to prove.
Now, what is changing things is the loss
and
the fact, and here's a good example, Pittsburgh tends to rebound well off a straight-up loss. Usually really strong coaches do. They've covered 6 straight off a straight-up loss, so that's noteworthy. You talked about the travel. Let's just get this in right now. Pittsburgh has done exceptionally well, both straight up and ATS, against Ohio teams. And they play Cincinnati once a year on the road, Cleveland once a year on the road. And one of the reasons for that, and I would like to get your opinion, is they travel so well, especially at places typically that it's not so hard to get tickets at a Cincinnati game or at a Cleveland game. It's a couple-hour drive for each of those. They've done exceptionally well, and they've actually covered, where are we at? 8 of 9 at Cincinnati. And they've done well at Cleveland too. Any thoughts on that?
Just to make it clear, when you're saying they travel well, you're talking about their fans.
Their fans,
yes.
Yeah. 40% of the stadium is going to be Steeler fans in these games.
Yeah, there's no question. I mean, I can tell you, I was back home last week, and a lot of my friends and everything, they're going on, they have like bus junkets of day trips where, they got blocks of tickets and people are going. So you're absolutely right. And this is, this becomes for Pittsburgh, I hate to say it, it's amazing how 8 seconds changes the whole landscape of the AFC. But if Pittsburgh wins, they are in the driver's seat for everything in the AFC last week.
No, yeah.
Now by losing that, there's 5 teams that I feel are going to battle for 4 positions. Let's just say the AFC West, there's one team coming out of there, the team that wins the division. Between Baltimore, Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, New England, and the Jets are going to be your 4 remaining playoff spots. One of those teams is going to be...
So the Bills are out. I think the Bills have just as good of a chance as Cincinnati. Let's look at some stats here. Is one of the things that we've launched this week, Vegas Rankings, and you can check that out at vegasrankings.com. We take the expert opinion of bookmakers, professional bettors, and they rank the best 32 or the 32 NFL teams. Now, the Bengals are the worst team with 6 or more wins. So amongst all the teams that have a lot of wins, they're ranked 13th right now. Now, here's what's interesting. Of 4 of their wins were against the bottom 6 teams in the NFL. Now let's think about this and say you got the bottom 6, they've played 4 of them. Now, you got to win those games. You got to give them credit. Hey, they beat the Bills. To me, I give them credit on that, though the Jets might have exposed them a little bit. But this Cincinnati team is certainly not the record, as Bill Parcells would maybe disagree. And to me, I think that has to be why this line is what it is. And that's why I probably lean Bengals here. In fact, I certainly lean the Bengals at +3, is if you look at it, and let me get the stat here, this is interesting, is this line was actually, if you flip the line, is if this game was at Pittsburgh, it'd be -9. It's a 6-point flip home to home, typically. So, I mean, how... isn't it built into this number the Bengals are fraudulent, right? So if you think that the Bengals have any legitimacy, then you got to like the dog here. And if you don't, then it's what the line should be. I mean, what should the line be? Pittsburgh laying 5, 6? I mean, this assumes Pittsburgh is going to be hyper-focused off the loss, and this assumes the Bengals haven't done anything worth anything.
And quite frankly, you hate to throw the term around because it's very easy to do it, but this is almost a must-win for Pittsburgh, being where they're sitting in the division after last week's developments. If they lose to Cincinnati, and they lost both games to Baltimore, they're definitely looking at they're fighting for a wild card.
Well, yeah, I think they're clearly outside looking in for a division title. You can't lose twice to your best or your number one opponent in the division. I think we should assume max motivation for Pittsburgh, max motivation for Cincinnati. And, you know, Cincinnati was in the press was trying to talk about how this is just like the Baltimore rivalry with Pittsburgh and Baltimore and how the teams hate each other. But the fact they're saying that is a disadvantage to Pittsburgh because Pittsburgh doesn't feel that. And that's always the tough thing when you know, the old target on the back. I guess, let me do my projection. Let me ask you a question. I'm going to project here Pittsburgh wins the game 21-20. I just think there's too many points. I think the total's about right. I mean, the question is, where do you find value on Pittsburgh? This line assumes the best about Pittsburgh and the worst about Cincinnati. If that's correct, then this line's right. If it's not correct, this line's a little heavy on Pittsburgh.
Yeah, you know, you hate to say it that this is going to determine a lot of what we know about Cincinnati, but this team, do you realize only one team this year has scored over 20 points against them?
They've covered 10 of 11 games. So they're underrated. And I think they're being underrated here. The only reason I don't love Cincinnati is I think that when you get the Steelers really laser focused, but that's the thing, you can only try so hard. You throw someone in an ocean and say swim until you die or stop swimming and you die. There was a movie about that a few years ago. Is at some point the people drown. You can't just quit no matter what the stakes are. I'm not saying Pittsburgh is going to quit, but are they going to be at a fever pitch after the Patriots and after Baltimore, even though it's a borderline must-win game? That, to me, I think there's a little doubt about. You throw in that doubt with the Bengals winning 10 of 11 ATS, it's hard to say that 55 out of 100 times the Bengals aren't going to cover.
I can't disagree with you. One thing I'd like to get your opinion on from last week's game. I know we've had debates before. Do you still think Ike Taylor is one of the better?
Oh, for sure. I think Ike didn't have a great game there. I personally, I think before that game, he was having one of the top 3 or 4 years or top 3 or 4 corners in all of football. So, you know, you were on the field, you know, you were at the game. I mean, I certainly don't think Ike's our problem.
Well, he definitely was a problem for that particular game. And they went, and I can tell you that, you know, when you're at the game and you actually see the plays develop, and on TV you're only seeing where the ball's going. People were open on Ike all day. They were not afraid to pick on him on Sunday. And Baltimore had a lot of drop passes that, you know, obviously the Ben Roethlisberger, you know, turnover when we were driving was huge. But Baltimore, if they don't drop half of the passes that they did, wouldn't they even have been in that position at the end of the game?
Listen, at some point when you go 12 of 16 on third down, you can't act like they underperformed.
No,
I mean, no one plays a perfect game. I mean, so it's just the fact is Flacco had one of the worst, but entering that game, Flacco had one of the worst third down efficiencies in the entire league. He was like completing 48% of his passes. I have never seen a Steeler defense give up so many third down conversions.
They did. If you remember a few years ago.
They did well against the run. And listen, we lost. All right. Looking at that game, we win that game 7 out of 10 times at home, I think. But you know something? Maybe not without Woodley. With Woodley, that's the thing, is when you only have one pass rusher and they can double team him, it's really hard. The whole 3-4 is you're going to have 2 good linebackers to pass rush. And the fact of the matter is, because our line's not going to get a lot of, 3-4 is not supposed to get sacks, the D-line, the 3 up front, is it just takes 1/3, you know, literally one strip sack from Woodley, or one sack on that last possession, or one sack on the possession when they took it over on the 92-yard. It's like the Steeler defense is built on the premise you're going to have a penalty or we're going to sack you once, and you're going to be in trouble and have to punt. And with Harrison played an amazing game for coming back.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That play when he jumped over the guy, it was one of the coolest things I've seen. But without Woodley, this team is not as good. And even without him, we were 1 4th down conversion away. So I'm actually optimistic about Pittsburgh in general, but that loss practically hurts us.
It does. The only thing that we have to look forward to is our schedule gets very soft.
No, I agree. And listen, Baltimore's a team that almost got beat by Arizona. Obviously, you've got to give them a ton of credit. I think Pittsburgh still has a decent chance at the division. I think they still have a decent chance at having the best record. I mean, who's the best team in the AFC? It's got to be Baltimore, right?
Off of the one game, but you think back 2 weeks prior to that, everybody was what was wrong with them.
Is it the Patriots? It almost got beat against the Cowboys?
Yeah, it's definitely not New England.
Then who is it?
By default, it's Baltimore right now.
That's what I'm saying, is Pittsburgh, you give me a 16-team tournament of the AFC and all neutral field, I take Pittsburgh right now. Who do you take?
I agree. I just... we need a little bit of help on the defense.
But quite frankly, 2 years, well, I mean, without Woodley, I mean, listen.
If we get the guys back, it'd be a difference. I mean, we were only, several of those plays that you mentioned, we were just a half a step away from the sack. I mean, Flacco just got off the plays.
Listen, we can't turn the ball over like that. So, all right, listen, we got our projection out. The Pittsburgh video is the one where we dig a little deeper because we're both such big fans. And Marco's a real expert with Pittsburgh. 69. Now, this is documented, and we talk about it every week, but for new viewers, you need to know this. Marco has won 69 and lost 31 games. 69 and 31 in Pittsburgh-related teams. That's football, basketball, and baseball. So I might disagree with him, but he's probably right. We did the projection. Last thing, guys, every week we're putting our videos in a dedicated thread that's part of a conversation that we're going to continue off all these videos. You can go to pregamevideos.com, ask any questions you want, contradict us, whatever you want to do, and we'll see you there.